the first pick.
Alrighty, welcome to another live edition of On the Clock. On the Clock's presented by our friends at Titan Bat Company. If you're looking for the highest quality handcrafted wood bats in the game, Titan Bats has you covered with premium maple, ash, and birch game bats in 10 different models and colors to fit your swinging style. As you're gearing up for the spring season, Titan Bats is the perfect option for your next wood bat. In addition to game bats ranging from youth baseball to softball to men's baseball, Titan Bats also offers award bats that make the perfect gift for a teammate, coach, or baseball fan in your life. Check them out at titanbats.com and use the code JB15 for 15% off your first order. All right, it is College World Series finale weekend here, championship. We got Coastal Carolina, we got LSU, we got the whole squad here. We got Tyler, Will, Jason. Guys, are we excited? How we doing?
Pumped.
I wish baseball wouldn't end yet, though.
Yeah. Well, I guess we got Major League season still, if anyone cares.
But do I pay attention to Major League Baseball? Not really.
Tyler's like, when they leave college, I'm done. See ya. Good luck. Will and I are both in Omaha, so we'll be boots on the ground at the College World Series. Went to the press conference today. I have some thoughts on that, but I want to get everybody's kind of initial read on this series. So we got Coastal Carolina, we got LSU, the big powerhouse in the SEC. The whole entire narrative I've been hearing throughout the press conference was like, it's like David Goliath. Like Coastal, even though Coastal's won a College World Series in 2016, they're a playoff team all the time. They've won 26 straight games. But Will, I want to start with you. What is your take on this series?
To say styles make fights, and that's kind of what we have here. We have LSU that has the really big strikeout numbers in the rotation. The bullpen guys roll out throwing upper 90s. You've got guys in the lineup that are hitting 450-foot home runs. They've got over 100 on the season. Coastal's only got 66. And then you have Coastal that plays the small ball. They run out a lot of really high-quality arms. They don't walk anybody. And they do all the right things. They put together really good at-bats. So it's going to be really interesting for me. I love this Coastal team. From what I have seen so far, LSU has struggled with small ball so far in the postseason. Yeah. And their numbers indicate they don't play that style. And it's not like we don't know that. They only have about 30 sack bunts on the season. And in limited attempts in Omaha, nothing really has gotten down. And I think that the Coastal pitching staff can force them to get into those scenarios. And that might cause them to spur a little bit. So it's one of those things where LSU has the big ability to hang crooked numbers while Coastal kind of relies on timely hitting and taking extra bases. So you just have two completely different styles, which honestly makes it way more fun, in my opinion, instead of getting two big bruisers like a Arkansas LSU kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like for LSU, we talked about kind of them wanting to kind of take advantage and put up big numbers, but it's going to be real hard to do against this pitching staff. And then we got Jason over there. I got to get your thoughts because your team.
I don't know. That was the knife.
That was unnecessary.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw that. There was a knife twist.
Yeah.
No, frankly, I think you have the best two teams from both brackets.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to say that LSU is better than Arkansas. They beat them 4 out of 5 times. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the better team won. Now, it was crazy how it happened. But you would have to say that if you've beaten someone 4 out of 5 times, you're generally probably better. So there it is. But for this game, I think what Coastal will do, what Arkansas didn't do, is kind of to Will's point. They'll use the entire field.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back and watch that game 4 between Arkansas and LSU, what Cowan did so well is he basically just eliminated anything pull side, like pretty much anything pull side. Everything was slider away, two seam away, change up away. Everything was swing at it. And if you hit it, you're going to swing the way I want you to swing. And there were a ton of rollovers. There was a ton of weak contact. There was a ton of swing and miss. Everything was Arkansas was going up there trying to crush it, just absolutely trying to crush it. Even the big 2-run, I guess we can call it like fielder's choice error by Helfrich, that was exactly what they wanted. It was a changeup away, rollover, potential 5-4-3 double play. And I think what Coastal will do, to Will's point, is they'll say, we're not looking to hit 4 or 5 home runs this game. We're looking to get, 2 to 3, multi-run innings. I think Schnall said it pretty well when they were talking about the um, Louisville game, and he said, "Well, we have one big inning and they don't have any. We're up 1-0." Like they're almost just like thinking of it in as like those big innings.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think they're thinking like, hey, like let's get a solo home run here, a solo home run there. They want to put guys on the base and they want to make you uncomfortable and they want to get 2-3 runs an inning. Get a couple of those a game with their pitching, they have a really good opportunity to win. Now the difference is that LSU has a very good defensive infield. Milam has really put on a show in the College World Series, has been very, very good in the field. Braswell, I want to say he's like 1 for his last 40, but it doesn't matter because he's fielding incredibly well right now at third. And I know Dickinson had some odd plays in the 8th inning, I guess 2 nights ago, but he's still playing very well in the field. He doesn't have the range that Milam has, but Milam has incredible range. So I mean, they have a good defense, and I think combine that with what Will said with the strikeouts, I
Yeah.
I see this as an LSU series, but I don't know if it's in 2 or 3. Frankly, it just depends on. I think we'll know in those first 2 innings, as crazy as that sounds. Like if Anderson goes in there and he gets 5 Ks in the first 2 innings, like look out because Jay doesn't mind letting a guy go 120 pitches. He does it all the time. So if you get both Eyanson and Anderson into the 8th, both games, that's going to be rough. That's going to be hard to beat. And then you have Cade Evans, who's pitching incredibly well as well, and he's looking to be the theoretical 3rd game starter if needed. So I think if you were to give me $100, I would put it on LSU.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I would say in 2 or 3 yet, but I feel like I'll know after those first 2 innings.
Yeah, and I'm curious the role that they have Eyanson in. My guess is, again, like you said, he's going to be the game 2 starter, but they have not hesitated to have him come out of the bullpen in like a close game and kind of piggyback Cade. And they asked Eyanson in that question in the press conference. He's like, I'm going to be ready for any scenario. Like, again, he's probably just saying that as a player and in a competitor, but you just kind of never know what Jay is going to do and if he's going to take that route, because you could go Cade Evans in game 2 instead of on Monday. So it'll be curious to see the route they take there. And then Will, you talked about like kind of crooked numbers as well. The one thing we talked about before is how big this park plays and the small ball and the scenarios like that works for Coastal fairly well. And the weather, I think it's going to be 101 tomorrow. I was telling Tyler pre-podcast, and there's like 36-mile-an-hour wind gust right now, and it's supposed to be worse tomorrow. So they're going to be playing in that climate as well. So I feel like that's going to play a massive factor for this team.
Those wind gusts are blowing out today. I got to see it firsthand, actually. I'm streaming from Iowa Western Community College, but balls are flying here, and it is really hot and super, super windy. And so if it is blowing out, it's going to be interesting because we know Coastal is going to fill up the zone. The question is LSU going to get pitches to hit? And if they do, you can't miss. And so it's one of those things where I could see LSU blowing open an inning somewhere in there.
Yeah.
If we have 2 or 3 bad pitches and all of a sudden they hang a 6 spot on you and you're digging out of the hole. And like Jason was saying, they look to score a lot of 2-run innings over the course of a game. They're saying, and it tracks, if you score 2-3 runs in multiple innings, you're probably going to have a pretty good shot to win. But it's pretty tough if LSU can come out and swing it really hot and put up a 6-7 spot in 1 inning and kind of do all the damage at one time and say, we can piggyback on the back of Cade Anderson, Anthony Eyanson, Cade Evans. Like, they've got guys that can come out of the bullpen and just shove. So, I thought it was interesting that Coastal is pitching off. We haven't mentioned that game 1 will be Cameron Flukey and not Jacob Morrison. I think that kind of tells me that they like their odds against Eyanson better. And not that I never like to use the term punting because Cameron Flukey is a fantastic pitcher and has put up ridiculous numbers this season. But it's basically saying, going toe-to-toe, who do we think Jacob Morrison is going to outduel? Probably have a better shot against Eyanson over the way that Cade has been pitching, especially in the postseason. But especially considering his strikeout numbers, I think he's got 170 strikeouts in 110 innings. And so when you look at it that way and you say, he might be able to keep this offense off balance despite having a lot of guys with fantastic hit tools, putting together really lengthy at bats, it makes sense. But I have a feeling that if Coastal gets any of these games, this thing is going to be game 2. I'll be curious to see on how they manage Flukey, but I think it makes sense to go with him in game 1. He is their power arm in terms of velocity, in terms of stuff. So I actually really like the move, because if he comes out and everything's rolling, he can probably dual Cade for 5 or 6 innings, and that might just be enough time for Coastal to scrape across 5 runs or something, depending on how this goes. But the wind is going to be a huge factor tomorrow. I think Coastal is just going to stick with their approach. It's kind of going to look like what they did at Auburn. Like their approach at Auburn was fantastic. They put together lengthy at bats, and they had a couple of balls leave the yard. I think it's going to be similar. If we get one, we get one, but we're not banking on that. We're not getting out of the line drive, the small ball approach, just to try and lift the ball into the jet stream, right? So, and with how well they're always coached, I don't see that happening. I don't see these guys that are going to come up and take these huge hacks. Whereas if the jet stream is there, you might see a guy like, a Jared Jones take some huge hacks and he might struggle. So I think it's just the dynamic of guys knowing who they are and what kind of style they play.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, they asked Schnall and the players questions about the weather and stuff, and like, is that going to change their game plan? Of course, they're like, no, we're just going to go play Coastal baseball. Like, that's their goal. It's the way they've been playing all season long, and I just don't think they're going to change a ton of it. Tyler, I want to shift over to talk a little bit more about the makeup of the team. Both these teams have a ton of draft talent, but who are some of the kind of standout guys for you before we kind of jump into the journey of how all these teams got here?
I think obviously you've already talked about it. Morrison potentially being the I guess quote unquote Saturday guy. I guess it'll be Sunday now, but it's a 3-game series if it goes to full. So I referred to it as Saturday, but we've talked time and time again about how Matt Williams has been just a revelation for Coastal this year. He comes in. This is a team that has historically been a very good offense, but has never really had the pitching to match. And this year is completely flipped, where the offense, yes, they do a great job of timely hitting, like we had mentioned. But also the pitching has just been insanely good. They throw a ton of strikes. Looking at what Flukey's doing, like he's throwing 74% strikes with the fastball this year compared to last year where it was somewhere in the 60s. That is really good for what it's worth. But with Morrison, like, this is a guy that's 6'8", 245. And most of the times you hear a guy with that kind of listing, you're expecting lots of limbs all over the place, doesn't really throw a ton of strikes. Morrison is the opposite of that. He's got pitchability. He's got strike throwing abilities. It's a really well-balanced mix to have at the top of your rotation. And, I like what Will mentioned earlier. It's like Flukey's no slouch in this. But I really like the idea of having Morrison go game 2 against potentially Eyanson because of the fact that Morrison will give you length. Depending on how long Flukey goes, maybe you rest the bullpen a little bit. And if Morrison continues his stellar play, it just looks like a very easy path to a potential game 2 win if everything kind of works out perfectly for you. Not saying that's the case, but we'll see what happens. You're riding at 27-game hit winning streak coming into this. It's a very tough team to try and get around. And, we talked about Cade Bodine, who's arguably one of the best defensive catchers in college baseball now. His framing is insane. That's another thing that really stands out when you talk about this team is his ability to steal strikes and make it tougher on hitters is going to be a potential X factor going into this weekend. How many strikes can you steal against LSU's hitting to kind of keep them off balance and kind of really keep them out of rhythm? We talked about Jared Jones. He's a guy that went 0 for 5 with 5 Ks one night and then came back and he was the hero in the next game with a home run in the 8th, and then walked it off in the 9th against Arkansas. Sorry, Jason. But there's a lot to entail with that. And that's going to be a big thing for Coastal. Steal the strikes, get them out of the rhythm, and keep it that way. If you're able to keep them out of the rhythm, even with the wind blowing out like it is, if you can keep the ball in the park, that's a recipe for success. But, Coastal's success is going to run on those two guys on the 2025 side, and LSU is obviously chock full of talent. Cade Anderson is a potential 1-1 at this point. And I've got a scouting report coming up on him within the next couple of days. And the evolution from a guy that was fastball curveball last year as a reliever to now is 4 legit pitches, throws a ton of strikes. Command kind of backs up a little bit on the fastball, but he's got secondaries to rely on to really steal strikes and get ahead in counts. There's a ton to like with that profile, and he's a draft eligible sophomore. He's going to have leverage, but at the end of the day, if you hear your name in the top 5, leverage at that point doesn't matter because you're guaranteed at least $7-8 million.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens come draft day, but it's really a talented final to kind of dive into here, and I'm really excited to see how this goes. I'm rooting for Coastal as the local guy, obviously, but I have no qualms with either team. I think what Jason mentioned earlier, where these are the best teams from each bracket, that is very much true, and this is really going to be a fantastic final.
Yeah, no, I agree. And kind of talking about Flukey just not being able to go probably as much of length as Morrison. I think we saw that issue in the super regional against Auburn, right? Well, where Flukey kind of just struggled to find the zone and just was kind of leaving things over the plate. And I believe in the Arizona game, they had Eichhoff start and then Flukey followed him. So could we see something where, like, if Flukey only goes 4 innings, that Eichhoff comes in and just follows Flukey?
Yeah,
I think you could.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. And that's kind of because you have the top tier relievers, but it just feels like you're playing to try to get that first game win. Like, you'll figure out who you're going to throw on Monday if you do have a decisive game 3.
I feel like this is going to come down to which coach kind of changes from their game plan first. Like, who kind of, I don't want to say panic, but who kind of goes, okay, we got 4 from Flukey. Like, let's shift. Let's go to the pen. Maybe we can keep him for game 3, or almost kind of like what Arkansas did when they just immediately scrapped Root and they effectively pitched him what would have been game 3. So I think it'll kind of come down to who stays on schedule, and I think both teams, if they stay on schedule, are pretty hard to beat, just because of their intangibles. So if you can have your pitchers doing what you thought they would do, frankly, I think it could be pretty low scoring. I say that 25 mile per hour wind, southwest. I was looking it up while y'all were talking. Holy cow! So that would push. Lefties would love it because that's to right field. It may make things in left field kind of hold up and maybe push a little bit closer towards center, but I feel like this is going to be low scoring because I think both teams they're gonna sell out. So I feel like the first sign of maybe a couple of guys getting on, you may see like a Case and Evans come in because they've shown, like, LSU has 10 guys that they can start on that game 3, and you don't want to like save Ashores just because you're not up. So, like, if it's getting close, like, you may see him in the 4th or the 5th. You may see Evans game 2 in the 4th or the 5th. And if it gets to a game 3, they may start with like a Newt and then like try to finish it off with anyone. So my assumption is both teams are going to try to win it in 2, and then they're going to scramble in game 3 if need be.
Yeah, no, I agree there. For predictions, we'll save them probably to the end. I think we already saw SEC Unfiltered has picked a 2-0 sweep for LSU. So as a prediction, shocker. Going into kind of how these teams got here. So let's start with LSU. Sorry, Jason, we're going to go down this route here for you. So they beat Arkansas in game 1. Then go to take on UCLA, win that one. Then they get Arkansas again, and they win that. And they just basically find the easy way, or not an easy way, but they make it look like it was an easy way to the championship series, even though it was a very, very tough final game where they should not have won that game. But Jason, let's have you kind of give us the LSU journey to the championship final.
Yeah, frankly, they had and I don't want to say easy. Like no journey's easy.
None of this is easy in the College World
But
Series.
are we going from regional onward? Or are we going
Just the
from
College World Series?
Okay, just the College World Series. Okay, so I think at the beginning they came up against a pressing Arkansas.
Mhm.
Now you can see it overswinging, just like not really letting the game come to them. I mean, they actually struck out less versus Anderson than they did when they played up against him in Baton Rouge, and they should have beaten him. They were up 2 in like the 7th and fell apart.
Yeah.
Shocker. And so I think it was that second inning where they really didn't do much. It was a walk, like a bunt single, like a flare. Like there wasn't really. I think they maybe hit like 2 balls over 100 miles per hour. So it was kind of one of those things where they just didn't mess up game 1, and they had really good pitching. And sometimes that's all you need, especially in a field where it was blowing in at that point. And I mean, Aloy hit one versus UCLA. It was like 109 with a 31 launch angle, and it didn't go out. Like I would just say the stadium itself, another story, but we need to figure that out. This stadium is ridiculous. But I think game 1 they did what they were supposed to, and then game 2 I think they did a really great job of not pushing Eyanson. So I was trying to figure out like what were they going to do. So he threw 44 pitches. It was like, are they going to have him come back? Like, are they going to hold him for game 5? Are they going to hold him for game 4? Like, do they think they can win? Because at that point, I think it was either 4-3 or 5-3. I can't remember if they were up 1 or 2. I think they maybe were up 2. And I think they thought, okay, well, we already got UCLA's starter out, and he was kind of their game 3 starter. Like, is this basically going to be a bullpen game for the rest of the? And I think they treated it as such. And you had Cade Evans come in, who pitched phenomenally, and they did again just enough to win. And UCLA tried to come back a little bit at the end, but it just wasn't enough. And I think once they got to that 2-0, because of Anderson being able to go game 5, because Eyanson had only thrown 44 pitches, even if Arkansas won that game 2 nights ago, I think it was just inevitable that it was going to be LSU Coastal, just because you were going to have a bullpen game for Arkansas, and you're probably going to get Anderson and Eyanson like a 1-2 to make sure that they got to the championship game. So I think they played it about as well as they could have, given the circumstances, given kind of what was in front of them, because frankly, they had to play probably the second best team in the College World Series twice, and they beat them twice.
Yeah. I mean, Will, do you have kind of the similar take on LSU in their journey?
To Jason's point at the very end there, it is now huge for LSU that they ended up scraping across a couple of those runs in the 9th and end up walking them off, because we saw what they did in 2023. They pitched Skeens in that if needed game, and we didn't see him in the finals, right? And so I assume, and to Jason's point, he mentioned that they may have gone 1-2. I honestly think they just would have burned Cade, sold out for the win, and then you figure it out. And then you go Eyanson game 1. We just say, probably Cade Evans game 2. And if you get to game 3, we'll see what happens kind of deal. And that's what they did in 2023. So it would have been no surprise to me for them to roll out Cade Anderson at 125, 130 pitches and just say, you're probably not pitching this weekend, but you're getting us this win any way you can. So it's huge for them that they get him in game 1, because this could have been a much different look. And towards the end of that game, that was kind of in the back of my head as well. I think Coastal has a damn good shot now, because you don't have to face Cade Anderson in any of these games. And you can probably go Morrison against Eyanson in game 1. And then you have Flukey and Eichhoff for the rest of the thing. And then you've got guys like Hayden Johnson in the bullpen that'll lock things down in length. And so it's big time that they were able to find a way to win that game against all odds, quite honestly. But yeah, I mean, it's when you look at it, it's on paper, it was the harder side of the bracket. And to their credit, they beat, I mean, in terms of betting odds, the betting favorite, or the second best betting favorite, Arkansas, twice.
Yeah. No, I agree. Tyler, for you, who's the X factor for LSU going into this final?
That is a very good question.
Putting you on the spot.
I would definitely say Daniel Dickinson probably be like one of the guys to kind of bring up. Granted, I haven't watched a ton of the College World Series because I've been caught up with a whole bunch of other work, but I'm going to check his stat line. And I know like Dickinson during the second half of the year wasn't particularly spectacular. Like he did have a stretch where he didn't homer for like a month plus or something. Let me see.
You want to phone a friend while you're looking up stats?
Oh, here we go. He has so he's 3 for 11. Yeah, I can phone a friend. Screw it.
Horse while I'm eating a cracker. Brown, right fielder. So Coastal has pretty much just righties, right-handed pitcher dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to see the lefties having to show up for LSU. And so my assumption is you're probably going to see some of the Brown more than you're used to. And with the wind blowing out 20 miles per hour, it would not shock me if he hit a couple of home runs in the series.
Yeah. And he did have the quote today in the press conference that we came here to play baseball. We're not really scholars. So
yeah, he's Cardale from Ohio State. But like everyone's just looking for a soundbite. Like those guys get asked the most odd questions. Like,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the opponent? Like, what are they gonna say? Like, this is my best friend, and we do origami in the off season. Like, no, they're gonna be like, we want to beat these guys, and I want to beat them. Like, next question.
Yeah. I was gonna. He quote tweeted it, I think, after the person who tweeted it out, and he was like, "Hey, we have a team GPA of 3.0. All right." They're just looking for everything in those pressers. What about Will? Who's your X factor here?
I'd say it, but it's going to be Jared Jones again because he has the ability to flip games on its side at any single at bat. But we've also seen him golden sombrero. So it could be one of those things where he may come out and we may not see a barrel for the next couple of days, and LSU might not be a national champion. And on the flip side, we can kind of see what he did against Arkansas in that final game and can come up big. And I know he had a rough error on defense and then made up for it with a solo home run and then the walk-off. So he's one of those guys that at the plate, I like to hate on a little bit. He's not my favorite guy in that lineup, but it's really hard to ignore what he can do in the power department. And if you miss on a fastball over the heart of the plate, he is going to punish it, and it's going to go a long way. So I'm going to go with Jared Jones here. It'd be too easy to say Cade or Eyanson or Case and Evans because those guys are X factors every time they're on the field. But over the course of a series, a guy like Jared Jones can really change the course of this thing in good or bad direction, quite honestly, because he's always in the middle of the order.
Yeah, I agree there. The guy I was going to mention was Chase Shores, just because he's been just so dominant out of the bullpen, and he's saved different times. I think they left him in a little too long in that last game against Arkansas because he got hit around a little bit right at the last.
They just sat on his slider. They couldn't touch his fastball. I don't know if y'all are looking at the metrics on that pitch.
Yeah,
but it's 100, 101 pretty consistently with 15 to 17 inches of run. That's absurd. It's a turbo sinker. Like, it's absurd. I mean, Arkansas was basically saying we can't hit that. So you had Justin Thomas, JT, and you had Aloy both hit those sliders into kind of like the 6-hole because they were sitting on it like 100%. And really the only fastball that was touched was Robinette because he lefty. So he tried to hit the slider that first time he saw him. That was that 3,000 RPM slider, that back foot slider. So, I mean, he had both pitches working. And when you have a 101 mile per hour pitch that moves the distance of the plate, and then you throw out a 3,000 RPM slider, it's pretty much impossible to hit unless you're sitting on something. And they just sat on slider. So, I mean, I felt like he was still pitching well. I just think like you had Thomas who'd seen that slider 3 or 4 times now, because he also pitched against Arkansas game 1 as well.
Yeah. Moving on to Coastal. So I know we mentioned that they had the easier side of the bracket. I still don't think when did you get to the College World Series? Every team's good, right? At some point, you're going to run into every team being good. I mean, they faced a red hot Arizona to start, who was coming off a really, really good super regional performance, good regional performance, and then just kind of were red hot in the Big 12 championship as well. I had to go through them. They had to go through Oregon State, which I mean, they went and capitalized on a lot of those mistakes that Oregon State made in that game to win that one as well. And then they had to close it out by beating Louisville. So, I mean, it's not like the road was super easy, but they still went out and performed and dominated. And so, to me, I really, really liked the path that they took. But, Will, I wanted you kind of to go a little bit more in depth on what you saw in terms of Coastal's journey.
I think the best way to describe it is they just handled business. Like they led in the majority of all of those games outside of the Arizona game, and Arizona gave them fits. And to their credit, they were probably the second hottest team coming into this thing, other than Coastal. Mm-hmm. They played incredible at Chapel Hill. They played great in their regional, and it all started in the Big 12 tournament when they just started heating up. They went against Owen Kramkowski, who's a really, really good 2026 arm. They finally got to their bullpen late, and then you got Oregon State, who, again, they capitalized on mistakes. And that's what this Coastal team does, man. They capitalize on mistakes. And anytime you allow them to take an extra base, get a free base, they always seem to deliver. And while they don't have that big power guys that are going to hit the ball 400 feet out of the yard, put up 6 spots because of that, they have a bunch of dudes that are going to put together good at-bats, put pressure on the defense, and that's what they did all week. And then they played Louisville, who was a really hot team as well. And, I mean, they manhandled Louisville. And I personally, I thought we were going to see Forbes in that game. I know it was really short rest. He's had some arm issues, so kind of on the fence in terms of player health in that right. But I did think that we were going to see him early on. They didn't, and Coastal just jumped all over their starter too. So I was super impressed with what they've done. I mean, it's hard not to be impressed with what they've done. Tyler Sterling, you're not really doing anything wrong, right? You're pushing all the right buttons. But the guys you have to look at are Carbone out of the bullpen and Hayden Johnson out of the bullpen have been unbelievable. And to Jason's point, they're really right-handed heavy. Those are 2 really, really good lefties out of the bullpen. So, if something does happen to where they get good left-on-left situations late in games, you're going to see those 2 guys. Those guys have been kind of slotting in the late inning, high leverage role anyways. And if they have any chance of a lead, if they have a 1-run lead, 3-run lead, they're probably going to go to those guys. And those guys are going to continue to be workhorses for them like they have been the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the one guy I was going to mention too is that always seems like he's coming up in clutch situations, Colby Thorndike. Like every single time it was like that guy was coming up and he was doing damage. And it was kind of crazy to watch. And it's a guy that, to be honest, I watched him in the Sun Belt tournament and didn't pay a ton of attention to him. And he's just kind of gone off in this College World Series. And I feel like Coastal just keeps having those guys that you just don't expect step up. And that's part of the reason why they keep capitalizing on these opportunities. Like everybody expects like Barthol and Cade and Bodine to go do what they're going to do. Same with like Sebastian Alexander. But it's just like the lineup from top to down, like Dean Mijos, I think made a really incredible catch in the outfield to help save them at one point. It's like guys are just stepping up and making the plays that they need them to make, both offensively and defensively. And I think that's just what's impressed me the most with them. Jason, do you have any other thoughts? Tyler, any other thoughts on Coastal?
No, so I'm going to echo one thing that Will said was when they get guys on, they get them in.
Yeah.
So I think the last game they had 6 hits with runners in scoring position. Yeah, they went 6 for 11 against Louisville with runners in scoring position. Arkansas, conversely, the entirety of the College World Series, I think they had 4. So it's one of the things where they're not just getting guys on, they're capitalizing when they get guys on. They're being opportunistic. And I think that kind of goes back to one of the first things that we said, that they're going to hit that ball away and they're going to put it in the opposite side. Like they're not looking for that 2-run home run. They're looking to string together a single, a double, a walk. They want the bases moving. They're not thinking, bloop and a blast. They're thinking, a good at bat, maybe a single, maybe a hit and run, some steal. Basically, how do we put pressure on the opposition, and how do we utilize the entirety of the field? And so, yeah, I think something that we're gonna have to see is kind of that. Does that continue for Coastal? Because I think those opportunities are going to be fewer, and so if you're going to have if you're going to have less opportunities, do you continue with like your consistency of capitalizing on 30 to 50% of them? And if you don't, and you also have fewer of them, I think you're not going to see as many crooked numbers in as many innings.
Yeah. Tyler,
in hit batters, in hit by pitches.
126.
Yeah.
What did Schnall say that there's someone's like, what have you guys done to like get more hit batters? And he's like, I just don't let them eat if they try to avoid the pitch. Tyler, what about you? Any final thoughts on Coastal, and then who's your X factor?
I'm actually going to mix them both together. Blake Barthol is probably the biggest X factor for Coastal in that lineup. And we mentioned before, like, phone a friend, Jake Brown. Thank you, Jason, by the way. Jake Brown obviously destroys righties. That's been his MO all year. And having that kind of power prowess from the left side to kind of face against these righties is a good thing. Barthol is kind of that same way, where it's a lefty bat that prioritizes putting the ball in the air, the wind blowing out. I could totally see Barthol being a guy that hits a home run or two to kind of like helps push this Coastal team into a lead. And we've talked about it before, where this is not a Coastal team that hits home runs. They're not very powerful, but Barthol is arguably their biggest power asset in the lineup. And I want to say he's coming off a 3-hit game. If not, it was maybe against Arizona, and it was Thorndyke that had a 3-hit game against Louisville. But those two guys are the biggest X factors for me. How they perform, being one of the sole lefties in that lineup, is going to be critical, I think, for them to really succeed apart from pitching. So I kind of just wanted to put that out there. I think Barthol is going to be a big X factor in terms of how he performs against LSU this weekend.
Yeah, he was impressive in the Sun Belt, and he was part of the reason why they won a couple of those games too. So I agree. I think he's going to play a massive role. Will, what about you? Who's your X factor?
I mentioned Blake Barthol far too many times to go with him, but I do echo that, because he has been he's just one of those guys. He is the one guy in that lineup that can change the course of a game with one swing, and he's going to have that opportunity a lot. My guy is going to be Sebastian Alexander. He has been really, really good for them. He's been really productive. He's put together good at-bats, and while his average isn't great in the College World Series, he's been really good over the course of the postseason, and he also provides a little bit more power. I just think the combo of between him and Dean Mijos, who is just an on-base machine when he's in the lineup, I think those two guys together kind of create this lineup depth, and that's just how that bottom half of the Coastal lineup is. Outside of Bodine, outside of Barthol, it's a bunch of guys that are on-base machines that put together really quality at bats. But I think Sebastian Alexander, who has a little bit of juice as well, he's got 10 home runs this year, so he's right behind Barthol in the home run category over the course of the season. I think he can be a huge piece of this lineup through this series.
It's crazy to me that no one talks about Sebastian Alexander. I feel like he never gets any attention through, like, he's never in the presser. He's just always kind of just doing his thing, being productive, and then he just kind of flies under the radar. But he's been one of the most productive hitters in the entire lineup for the entire season. It's just crazy. Jason, what about you?
I'm glad no one said my name because I'm excited about it. Wells Sykes. So I'm a big portal guy. It's what I do. Big portal get for Coastal. They didn't get a lot. I think they only had like 5 or 6 guys, if I remember correctly. So portal guy from the Citadel. I think I've said it already. You have the biggest stadium that most of these guys will ever play in, regardless of league, in terms of, launch angle, exit velocity isn't going to go out. So this weekend may be a little different if it's blowing out 20 miles per hour, but there's so much room in center field that you have to have someone that can go get it, and he can go get it. and he also kind of just like embodies that scrappy, I'm going to get on base and I'm going to get myself to second. He's not going to hit home run. He's not going to do anything like that. But something tells me he's going to be one of those guys when if they have like a crooked number inning, he's going to be a part of it. That guy who kind of can roll over the lineup, the guy who can make sure that your singles don't turn into doubles, that your flares don't turn into hits, and that's someone that can really be the catalyst for a big inning for you.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to cheat on mine, but I'm going to say Cameron Flukey, just because I think game one's going to be so pivotal. And if he can
we need to work on definitions of X factor. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, the only reason I'm saying that is because game one is going to be so pivotal. And I feel like if they can pull off a game one win on the back of Cameron Flukey, they have a chance to win this entire thing. And that's the only reason I'm going with him. Trying to think. Here we go. What are we going to go with next? Are we into predictions here? Yeah, I believe we are now into predictions. So we're going to start with game one prediction, and then we'll go into the series prediction. Tyler, who's your game one winner?
Okay, this thing's working. Cool. I'm going to go LSU game one. I do think Cade Anderson's going to give them probably 6-7 innings, and then you go to probably Chase Shores out of the bullpen. And I just think overall, like that's a tough duo to kind of make it work against. However, if you can make Cade Anderson, if you push him out through, 4 or 5, I think that's a big win for Coastal. But I just personally don't see it right now for game one. But I do like Coastal's chances for the rest of the games, but we'll kind of push that off to the side for a moment.
Yeah, I think LSU is my game one prediction too. Just kind of riding Cade Anderson. Will, what about you? Are you going LSU?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the chalk as much as it pains me. It's just too hard right now. It's almost like, I'm not going to say the Skeens factor, but this year it kind of feels that way where it's like he's on the bump. It feels about as guaranteed of a win as there is in college baseball right now. So I'm going to go with the Tigers in game one.
Love it. Jason, are you in the same boat?
So for me, I feel like if LSU wins game one, I think they sweep. I think you have Eyanson going game two. Frankly, I think Eyanson has better stuff, like in terms of like swing and miss. I think Anderson has better placement and he tunnels it better. So I think like he's one of those guys, if he's on, it's so hard to hit him because every pitch, like he has 3 breaking balls that pretty much out of his hand look all exactly the same. But if Eyanson is hitting that like curveball, that like true 12-6 curve, I mean, he made Arkansas look like a mid-major in Baton Rouge. I think he went 6, no earned, like 12 punchies. Like he looked absolutely dominant. So long-winded way of saying, I think I'm going to go Coastal. And yeah, I'm going to go Coastal game one because I feel like if they don't win this, then I think LSU's going to sweep.
Yeah, you think that Eyanson can outduel Morrison? I mean, I kind of agree.
Well, I think Coastal's going to sell out. I really do. So I think you're going to see, sacrifice hits. I think you're going to see suicide squeezes. I think you're going to see some crazy shit. Because I feel like they know if we don't win game one and we have Eyanson game two, there's a high likelihood we're getting swept. So I think they're basically saying, like, we're going Flukey. That way, if he goes 4, we can use him again game 3 if need be. I really feel like that's kind of why they're doing that. Almost like if he's on, if he's going, let him go. But if he's not, take him out. Put your next best guy in. That way you can keep him from game 3. So I think you're going to see just a bunch of buttons pressed for Coastal. And so I think it's one of those, it feels like and I hate this because Coastal doesn't feel like a Boise State, but it feels like a Boise State versus Oklahoma, like the 2005, like Sugar Bowl or whatever, where it's like they're throwing,
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty. They're doing all this crazy shit, and then they come out of it and they win. And you're like, oh, how did they beat that like great team? Blah blah blah. It's because they did some crazy shit. Like so, I feel like they're going to push LSU in a manner they haven't been pushed. Because I do feel like LSU has it's not that they've coasted. Clearly they haven't coasted, but they've stuck to the schedule every single game, the entirety of their entire run, maybe outside of like game 3 versus Little Rock where Cowan got beat up. Like that's it. Outside of like 2 innings, it feels like they've just been on autopilot in terms of like coaching management decisions. So I think that once, like, what are they going to do when they're going to have to take it off of autopilot and really start to adjust? And I feel like that's what's going to happen game 1. So give me Coastal game 1.
Yeah, and I like your point of them potentially changing things up too, because, Will, we had talked about this in the Super Regional in Auburn, where when Flukey was struggling, we're like, why aren't they pulling him? Like, why aren't they taking him out? Like, do we see them on tomorrow night if Flukey's struggling through like the first couple innings? Do they just pull him, like to Jason's point, to throw them on potential Monday game? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Eichhoff did throw a lot in that last start, so I don't think that we're going to see the Flukey Eichhoff piggyback, although that would be my inkling if they were to play it like that, like they did in game 1.
Yeah.
But he's on really short rest. Like I think he threw close to 100 pitches in his last start, which was Wednesday. So he's on really short rest with a pretty high pitch count. So I'd be shocked if we see him at all tomorrow, which makes me think like, yes, I think you do sell out. If it gets in trouble, you probably go to Hayden Johnson really early, and he can provide you a little bit of length, and then you kind of see what you can piece together towards the end. But to Jason's point, yeah, you do. I think we're going to see a lot of steals. We're going to see a lot of bunts. And that's the way that LSU hasn't been pushed, because nobody really plays that style of baseball in the SEC, and Coastal plays it really, really well, which is why I'm so fired up about this series, because it's just different. And I've seen SEC teams struggle with handling that style of baseball.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Like that, Kentucky. You know how
That
LSU did with Kentucky? They lost the series. So like it's, again, they're gonna do some crazy shit that you don't expect. So I'm really, and LSU hits righties better. They just do. And so, do they go to that, kind of funky lefty quickly? Because if they're hitting the righty, I know that's their entire starting rotation's righties. But if you get in trouble early, I don't think you just say like, hey, we'll figure it out. I think you have to go, shit, like, this is just who they are. I mean, Arkansas didn't pitch one of their best relievers, Dylan Carter, and everyone's like, why? It's because LSU hits righties so well. So they just threw lefty after lefty after lefty. Yeah. So I mean, I think they could. I think we could see some moving parts quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Overall series winner. So we'll start with you. Who is winning the College World Series championship?
I have to. Coastal in 3. I do think LSU gets tomorrow. I think Morrison gets them right in game 2. You get back to Eichhoff, who is just the most – I don't even know how to describe what he is. I described him the other day as like the least impressive but also the most impressive pitcher you'll watch. Like the stuff is nasty, but like it's not high velocity. He just drills spots. The slider is really tight. It's a good pitch. And then you're just going to have a lot of workhorses in the bullpen like they do. I mean, this is a top 5 pitching staff in terms of ERA, in terms of WHIP over the course of the season. And it speaks volumes to what they do, right? All 3 starters have 22 walks, 11 walks in the entire season. Riley Eichhoff has 11 walks in 90-something innings this season. Absurd. So they're not going to allow free bases. Teams become uncomfortable when you pitch that way. And even if you don't have overpowering stuff, you can get beat by pitchers like that. And that's why I like this Coastal team so much, because you have a bunch of guys that just do that. You don't have 98 out of the bullpen for 12 guys. You don't have the Chase Shores, but you have guys like Hayden Johnson with a funky arm angle and good stuff. And he'll beat you at the top of the zone with 94, 95. And he's got really good stuff otherwise and fills up the strike zone. So I got to go with Coastal. I always lean towards that style of play because, again, regardless of the weather, wind's blowing in, wind's blowing out, that style of play will always work. So give me Coastal in 3.
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm going with Coastal too. Is like every team these days is like guy who can throw 98 plus, not necessarily hit the strike zone, who can hit the long ball. Coastal does the exact opposite, basically. They still have pitchers who are going to throw in the mid 90s, and like Flukey's got electric stuff, but they live in the strike zone and they find ways to command every single pitch that they have, and I think that's going to be a huge advantage for them. And then, like we've mentioned on the lineup, like they're not going to hit the long ball. They're going to go out and just be scrappy, get on base, get hit by pitches. They're going to try to make contact in situations with runners in scoring position. Like, I'm all aboard. I'm sticking with my pick from the pre-college World Series and sticking with Coastal. Tyler, what about you? Who's winning this one?
I think I've already added myself as the local Coastal guy, so give me Coastal in 3. It's much to the point of what Will was saying. You know, I think this is a team that is just going to make it difficult for LSU to get or take advantage of mistakes. You know, you're not going to get anyone on Coastal staff that's going to walk the bases loaded or anything. It's going to be a very grinded out, very tough matchup. And I really do like Jacob Morrison in the game 2 slot against Eyanson. So give me Coastal in 3.
Love it. Jason, what do you got to wrap us up?
I see 3 possibilities. I see LSU in 2, I see LSU in 3, and I see Coastal in 3. I don't really see a scenario where Coastal gets it in 2 because LSU starting pitching is just so good. I don't see both, Anderson and Eyanson losing on back-to-back days. That would be crazy. But I'm going to go LSU in 3. I think, Coastal's won, 26 in a row, 20-something in a row.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do after that first loss? And I think it's coming. And so, and also, what do they do when they get to game 3? Because they really haven't had to be pushed in a game 3. They went 3-0 in their regional. In that regional game, they were going against a team that was effectively almost out of pitching in East Carolina at that point. Then they went up to Auburn, and they just beat the piss out of them. So they never really got to game 3. And then they got to game 3 here. But again, you had a Louisville team that was, basically out of pitching. So it's I don't think they've gotten to a game 3 where they've had to go, we need to adjust. And I think they're going to have to adjust game 1 and 2 to kind of put them off schedule. And so I don't see them being able to almost manufacture 9 innings in game 3, as well as LSU will be able to manufacture 9 innings in game 3. Additionally, 20-mile-per-hour wind out, that clearly favors the team that hits more home runs.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel bad for Coastal because if this game was played a week ago where everything the wind was blowing in and it didn't matter, if you hit the piss out of the ball, it was staying in the park. Gage Woods, no hitter, he had 2 balls that probably would have been 30 feet over the fence at bomb. Now I think that happened inning 1 and 2. He dominated, 3 through 9, but there were a couple when they went off the bat, I was like, oh shit. And then it didn't even get to the warning track. So you flip it completely around, those balls are going to go into the 7th, 8th row. Mm-hmm. And we talked about Bear Jones. He hits Oppo so well. That home run versus Gackle, Oppo. Incredible home run because they've been pitching him slider away all game. They throw a fastball kind of middle in, almost where that slider would have started, and he just punished it. So, for me, that was such an incredible swing because he was just getting beat over and over on that slider. To be ready to hit a 97-mile-per-hour fastball was just incredible. Long-winded story of saying LSU in 3.
No, I was going to say, which is a great reason for having Jared Jones be the X factor, right? Because if he does that and hits the home runs, then yeah, LSU's got a chance. But if he's striking out 5 times and getting the platinum sombrero, I don't know.
That ball he hit against Gackle, where he kind of sat and stared at it, where it went out the first row, that ball would have been 15 rows deep if it happens tomorrow. with the way the wind's blowing. So, I mean, it's gonna add legitimately 20 feet to every pop up because the wind was blowing in 5 to 10 miles per hour. Now it's gonna be blowing out 22 miles per hour. It's gonna make it to where balls that didn't get to the warning track have a possibility of going out.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anybody have any other storylines from this final that they want to talk about before we get into final thoughts? Will, looks like you got something.
I do. I have one quick one. Rematch of Jay Johnson in 2016 versus Coastal Carolina. He was the head coach at Arizona when Coastal won their last national championship. Flipped over from Gary Gilmore. Now you have Kevin Schnall, who is a longtime assistant coach, going back up against Jay Johnson at a different school. And I believe Coastal bounced LSU in the Super Regional, if I'm not mistaken, that season. So a little bit of like dual revenge going. I know Jay Johnson wasn't at LSU at that time, but a little bit of double revenge angle on LSU. But it felt like for a year where the storyline was that all 8 teams hadn't appeared in it in 2024. Every individual team had a storyline. You had Coastal and Arizona matching up in game 1. You had Oregon State on Arkansas on opposite sides of the bracket. You had the Jay Johnson versus Coastal storyline. You had UCLA being the last time that they were in the World Series. There was no Texas teams. Similarly to this year, they won it that year. UCLA obviously didn't win it this year, but it just felt like there were so many cool storylines this season in a year where the biggest one was it's 8 brand new teams.
Time is a black hole. That's the only thing that I'm coming away with on that. I will tell you one person who doesn't want to probably answer any questions about the 2016 Coastal team, and that was Kevin Schnall in the press conference, because I think every question to him was about like 2016, and he was like, "This isn't 2016 anymore." But thanks, appreciate you asking. Anybody else have any storylines for final thoughts?
I got one. LSU fans. So I think, again, this kind of goes to Coastal is, I mean, Auburn, you know, they can fit like 7,000 people in there. It can get pretty rowdy, but they never really allowed like those fans to get rowdy. I mean, they kind of coasted, you know, pun intended, the entire time. And you could probably see 90-10 LSU Coastal fans there. And what are they going to do when, you know, they start chanting LSU in the second and there's runners on first and second and nobody out? Like, you all, Will, I think, you know, maybe Tyler, you said like, you know, they're not going to walk the base loaded. What are they going to do when 14,000 people are like going crazy? Because those LSU fans are a different breed. And I think that's going to be quite a different environment than what they're used to. And it's not as if the other fans for the other teams didn't travel, but it was very clearly more packed for the Arkansas LSU games than it was the other games.
The question is, where's the Coastal Jello shot count at? They're going to be far behind LSU.
I feel like that's all fabricated now because they came out with like a remote edition.
Oh,
like use this QR code and order it from home. Like that's so cheap.
No, it's not the same. You got to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tyler, what about you? Any other storylines for you?
Biggest storyline. Why did the college baseball season fly by this year? Is that like a storyline? I don't know.
Just getting older and time doesn't exist anymore. That's what I've learned. So
that's valid. I don't know. It's like what is today? Today's the 20th. So we're within 3 to 4 weeks of the draft here, and it generally feels like we just started our season. Like 3 of us were in the same press box at Globe Life in February. Like that was just yesterday. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Would like for time to slow down, please, and thank you.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts, Jason? Before
I got one. Someone said LSU didn't play Kentucky. Did I goof that?
I think you might have. I don't think LSU did.
Oh,
I thought you were talking about the super regional between those two.
Nah, wait, super regional? Oh, like 2 or 3 years ago?
Yep.
Okay. No, I'm trying to think. I thought LSU lost 2 at home. Was that Auburn? Maybe I'm going crazy.
They got swept at Auburn, I think.
Let's see. Yeah, they got swept by Auburn, but at Auburn.
Did Kentucky beat Tennessee? Kentucky beat Tennessee Because I remember everyone was like, Kentucky is done. And then they had a great series. It must have been versus Tennessee.
Yeah.
Womp, womp, womp.
Will, you got any final thoughts for Omaha?
That's all I got. We'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah. My only final thought is go check out the Chinook booth, Omaha Baseball Village. They're out there, tons of seats. Be sure to check them out. We'll be on the ground. Going to try to do a little quick preview from the stadium tomorrow. We're covering the game. We'll try to be doing a little bit of other things like Golden Spikes coverage and all that fun stuff. But until next time, we'll see you.